How's everyone?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Good.
Feeling energized. I just got back from my walk.
Oh, good for you. Is it nice outside?
It's a little, yeah, it's not too bad. It's mid 50s.
Okay, awesome. First, I want to say congratulations again to Tammy, Kai, and Michelle for second and third place for our Listen to Spring contest. Tammy, I know on Monday you were subbing, so you were able to come in, but real quick, would you just tell us how much potential business you think you may possibly have earned by doing that? And that's just what's come so far.
I definitely have one listing. It's going live on Sunday. And then I have another listing right here in my neighborhood that has tenants. So it's a little bit delayed, but we're looking for that listing in July. And then there's another listing in the neighborhood that I just was working in. So there's 3 listings that are, I mean, nothing is for sure, but they're very strong listings just out of, I usually will print them, in the afternoon, and then sitting on the couch at night, I'll fill out the handwritten notes and send them out. So it hasn't been, crazy hard or anything. And I will often, when I pop out to get my own mail,
Okay. Sorry, Tammy.
I'll take the ones that I've done in my neighborhood and just drop them off.
Do you guys mind recapping, like, what was the top 3? How many?
Oh, he was in there. One.
Doug is asking for the numbers.
Just a,
How many I did?
71, 73. We did 71.
Yeah, I think I did 71. Well, the last time I looked and remembered, it was 68, but
Yeah, in total, the group sent out, at least recorded. I know some people sent them out, but didn't submit. 176 were sent out. Tammy?
oh, I think I sent out 68, but then the 2 listings that I got from it add to 71. So I actually sent out 68, and then I have one more listing after the competition ended.
Okay. Kai at 34, Michelle at 20. So awesome. Kai, Michelle, any potential business that you foresee getting from those? Any feedback you can share?
I have possibly 2. One is within a year, and the other one, I'm pretty sure I'm going to get him to list. It's my stepdad, and he's been on the fence about it. And I was actually looking at the pendings, and I took Matt's advice and called a listing agent, and he was very nice about it and gave me all the details on the pending listing, which helped when I talked to my stepdad. And so he's very interested now. So I'm hoping that we can list that pretty soon.
Awesome. Awesome. I always, as a word of advice too, I always try to do that too. If I see a pending that's very comparable, if I go on a listing appointment, right? Because I talk about actives, pendings, and sold. If you can get that information about a pending, some agents will give it to you. Some will be a little bit closed, but you don't get what you don't ask for. So good job in knowing some insight. Obviously, it still has to close, but if everything goes as planned, that'll be the most newest comp for you. So.
And he was awesome about it too. So that was great.
Good. Hey, in this market, some agents are very proud to share their results.
Yeah, and he was, because it was like 35,000 over asking, and he had multiple offers, so it was awesome. So.
Good. Awesome. Okay, so we're going to basically talk about 2 different topics today. Maybe 3. It all kind of goes in, but again, trying to utilize what you guys are looking for on the board out here and what we're hearing some questions about. So one thing that popped up as a question, which I want to take a few minutes to talk about, is certificates of occupancy. And then we're going to talk a little bit more about like the process, if you will, maybe clarify some questions or talk about some different scenarios, because there's not necessarily one size fits all when it comes to navigating the waters after inspection, addendum, that kind of thing. So I'm just going to share my screen and bring up some resources that I just was typed up and was looking at. Okay, so I wanted to bring up certificate of occupancy. Can anyone tell me what a certificate of occupancy is in terms of our world of real estate?
That's where where
It's a certificate a buyer has to supply.
Hold on. Because we've got some Zoomies and we've got some people in person, you might not be able to hear. So Andrea, can you speak up a little bit?
That's where a municipality will say the house is livable and you can go in and live in it.
So it's a municipality basically giving a stamp of approval on a property. John, what's your definition? Or how would you explain it? Because there's no right or wrong. Well, there is wrong, but
Well, yeah, she's right. It's just.
yes.
I would then, my next question would be, how do they give the stamp of approval?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
John, how would you explain it?
So again, it's just a certificate required by certain municipalities in order for a buyer to occupy a house. If you do not have a certificate of occupancy in a city that requires one, you cannot close. Or you can close, but you won't be able to occupy the home.
Yeah. So it's a bit of a gray area. You can't be definite yes or definite no, but there is, we lump the word certificate of occupancy in a few different ways, and we'll talk about both of them. Most of the time, it's the final stamp of approval from a municipality saying a house is complete and all items are completed up to code in terms of renovations or new construction. It also applies to a home being checked for safety, health, and legal requirements to occupy or lease the property. So I just copy and pasted some definitions that I found from GMAR. A certificate of occupancy is a document that states the legal use of your property, verifies that it's up to code, and confirms that people can safely live there. The definition of this is different for every municipality too, guys. So I just want you to note that little caveat. There's not a one size fits all thing. The document will show property address, legal description, including use type and square footage, zoning code, the owner, and any notes relevant to the safety of the property. Has anyone ran into an issue with this representing a buyer or a seller?
Yeah,
Amy,
I did.
Where was
In
the
my
property?
in Southfield.
Okay.
And it was it's not quite. So what happened is we had a delay in closing because of, the basement getting flooded. But my, the people moved out because they went to their new home. And
Tammy, you got bad internet. In some cases, the municipality will need a reinspection if it's vacant for over 30 days. I don't know if that's where she was going with that or not, but
Only if they catch it.
yeah, for a certificate of occupancy inspection, the municipality will send out an approved inspector who will compare the building to the current code and check for violations, include plumbing, electrical, general building facets, fire safety needed, sometimes even smaller issues like staircase has a banister or not. I've encountered that. If you'll fail, you get a list of items that need to be fixed and a certain amount of time to make the repairs. Then once all repairs are complete, you'll need another inspection and check it all out and get the green light to move forward. Why are we talking about this, guys? I was talking with Sharon and I had a seller. The property was in Dearborn and I don't do a lot of business in Dearborn, right? So I, doing my due diligence, look and find out, okay, we need the city inspection in order to be able to, in order to sell the property. And my sellers were like, well, I don't, let's wait until we get it under contract. What's the problem with that? What's the problem preemptively if you're going to be listing a property waiting until you get under contract?
The city could be like, we'll give you like, we'll inspect your house next year, like 2022. You never know.
Yeah, potential delays, potential issues in the closing. What if they come in and they say you got to do all of these things? If I'm on the buy side and I'm representing a buyer, we're going to a property in an area that needs a C of O, and I ask, hey, has it been completed? And they say, no, we haven't even had their inspection. How's that going to make me and my buyer feel?
Nervous.
Yeah, because we're still going to do our private home inspection probably, but if they haven't even had that done, I could be wasting a ton of money through an appraisal.
Who knows what they're gonna find?
Exactly. Does that make sense? So what are the questions that you should be asking?
Yeah.
One, is it on the list, right? Is it on the list? And So I attached this link here. This is the GMAR occupancy resource list. It's, you know, it's weird because I'm looking through this and it doesn't have Detroit. So I'm not sure if it's a different list or whatnot, but I do know Detroit needs them. But this is directly from GMAR. It's got city, the county that it's in, and then yes or no that it requires something and some notes. There's also a link to the different websites. So
And
like,
Matt, excuse
yeah.
me, it's Hope. Good morning. I was told a while back that the new mayor got rid of the required code checks. Right.
there to my that may have changed, and this is why I mean, again, I don't do business there, so I wouldn't know. So by no means am I the end all be all, but I would definitely go on Detroit's website, the city of Detroit's website, look at the building and understand that. Perhaps some properties were grandfathered in, and perhaps they're lifted it. I find this mainly in areas that want to basically have older homes and they want to preserve, you know, the integrity of the properties so that they don't slip down, you know, where we get like, you know, slumlords or properties that are just proper, you know, that are going to negatively affect the general values. So, or to money grab. Yeah, some are seemingly, you know, it's like a fee.
Canton inspects every house that's a lease every year.
So yeah, that's another good point. There's an annual in some of them, right? Maybe some of them don't need something to be sold, but in order to be rented out, they need something. And it's typically, like you said, annually a fee. So this has a list of a lot of areas in Metro Detroit. It's not all of them, but it's the ones that I would consider Metro Detroit, right? Oakland, Wayne, and Macomb County. I think there is somewhere, but this is all I could find.
If all else fails, call.
Yes.
Call the building department. Just ask. It'll take 2 seconds. Whoever answers the phone knows.
Yep, exactly. If you're representing a buyer, as you get to know areas, you can preemptively ask, right? And if I'm a listing agent and my property's in one of these, I'm going to probably put in the notes or be able to communicate to the agent. Yep, we've not only had it, but it's passed. Or sellers are working on getting those things.
I had a buyer last fall where they included a copy of Westland.
Yep.
They included a copy of the inspection, and there were a couple things on there that they weren't going to fix. And it said buyer to assume. One of them was like replacing a sliding door screen and fixing a cut in the linoleum floor.
Those are weird things.
Right?
Matt, can I add to that?
Yeah.
I can barely, was that Sharon talking?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I could barely hear her, but it sounded like she has a buyer who's gonna sign a letter to close in order to close in Westland. Is that correct?
Well, it's called a temporary certificate of occupancy.
Where a situation,
Yes, yep.
Yep.
So
where a city's
I wanna
gonna
chime in because I just went through a situation in Westland that is a lesson to be learned. I had a buyer, the seller did the inspection, fixed some of the items. We wrote up an addendum stating that the seller's going to fix these items, the buyer's going to fix these items. And one of them was for the electrical. They had the electrical replaced, but they never had a final inspection. Well, we went and signed in Westland. They have a letter to close before, and so this may be different than Sharon's, but the point is, we went to Westland and signed a letter to close so we could close without occupying. You cannot occupy till this electrical box was inspected. Yep. What happened was, or the result was, by signing this letter, by my buyer signing this letter to close, they assumed all responsibility for anything that was not up to code when the city came back.
Okay.
That was not the intent of our addendum. And the title company told me, since we signed this letter to close with the city of Westland after we signed the addendum, the letter to close overruled. So I just want to make that clear to people. If you are in a situation in Westland, that's the only one I can speak of because that's what I went through. If there's something that the seller is supposed to take care of, you want, and if you have to sign a letter to close, you want that in writing after you sign, because what could have happened is the city could have come in and said, they found some issues with the electrical box not being done or electrical wiring, and my buyer would have been on the hook for that instead of the seller as we had intended with the addendum.
Yep, exactly. And there's not a blanket statement to say what's going to be applicable to all municipalities and all requirements. So that's why, our caveat is call the city, call the building inspector, be very leery if there's if they haven't had the inspection, or if they have and they haven't completed, or if they're saying they're not going to. In Dearborn, if my seller didn't complete things, the city was willing to close with a temporary C of O. And when we say C of O, like, listen, it's not like this, the buyer's agent raising their head and saying, I won't close. The title company will not allow the closure unless there is this in place. It's part of their due diligence in doing clean title work to make sure that there is one if it's needed. So if you don't even think about this, it'll come up, believe me. But the city and Dearborn, in case, they actually would help hold money in a bond to be released when the work was done. Whose money that was it's negotiable, but just FYI, there's different caveats. But I pulled up this was for Dearborn. This is the application with the property address, all the information about it, to get this inspection done. They're clear saying we do Monday through Friday, 9 to 4. So anyways, ask questions. Yeah, go ahead, Hope.
So who's responsible for getting that cert done in the middle of the deal like that? That would still be the seller though, right? They
Correct.
showed us.
So you want to be very careful. Does everyone know our PA where it says municipal inspections? Does anyone ever know what that really means? Because most people just default check seller. It basically, if you're as long as that is required, your seller would be responsible. Now, if I'm representing a seller and we're getting a property ready to list, I'm going to have them do it, right? I'm going to be very leery about taking a property on that the seller is like, no, I'm not doing that, because it's got to be done. And I don't know, even in this crazy market, if buyers are going to be willing to take that on, not only the cost for it, but I don't even know if a buyer can order an inspection. They don't own the home. So
in John Jeter's and Sharon's situation, where you have this letter to close, I guess I'm trying to think through the steps. So the thing that we would need to do is delay signing that until that the requirements or concessions on that addendum are complete. Is that what I'm hearing?
It depends on what's in agreement and what the city will allow. Some will not allow a closing unless some will allow a temporary C of O in order to close, some will not. But if you don't have agreement in writing, like if I was submitting an offer as a buyer's agent on a property, and I'm going to do it in the normal way I would do with my private inspections and this and that. But if they don't have the city inspection done or the work completed, I'm going to add that to my offer in the PA. So it's in writing. It's subject to property, having, city inspection completed and sellers, completing all repairs necessary as required.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's better. Thank you.
I think I would make sure in your addendum that you're adding some kind of line that says subject to reinspection or something like that.
Okay.
To cover you.
Yeah, if the city does do a C of O inspection and they have a list of items, they're going to reinspect when it's done. So it is important when you have a seller, that has this list of things they need to complete, that they're having it completed by someone who knows what they're doing.
And understand that most cities require a buyer to be supplied with a copy of the city inspection so they know what the city had found.
Yeah, and if I'm representing a seller, if I have a listing, they've already done that, I'm going to include that in the documents,
Yes.
right? I'm going to show, hey, buyer, everything's done. The city came in, they said we had to do this. My seller completed this. We got it checked off. It's good to go.
So does that apply to with the temporary C of O as well? They gotta come back and reinspection?
Yeah. No, even if it's a city allows a closing to occur with a temporary C of O, meaning that the work is not completed, they're going to have to come back and do it. It's not like they just get to close and like they get off the hook. So depending on your agreement, the buyer might have to inherit, they're inheriting those issues that have to complete and have to complete them within a certain amount of time. Perhaps 3 months. If I remember correctly, they said you have X amount of time to complete them. However, you cannot move in until then. So even though they had like 3 months to do it, if they wanted to move in at the first month, they have to have it done and re-inspected.
So that's kind of.
Hey, Matt.
Hold on.
Hold on.
So that's kind of, the seller is like, so they get a temporary CFO, the transaction closes. So the buyer really can't even move in or do anything until all of that has been taken
Correct.
care of.
Right.
So wouldn't it be like really cool for the seller to just take care of all of that?
Of
so the
course,
buyer
it'd
be
wouldn't have
cool.
to?
Yeah. Yeah.
But sometimes
idea.
in negotiations, they won't.
Yeah.
Like I had this house in Westland, it had 2 or 3 stupid little things, but it was an estate issue. The person had passed away, kids are out of town, out of state. They're like, it's as is, I'm not dealing with that. Here, we paid for the city inspection. These are the things that need to get fixed. You do it.
Yep.
I had to go to City Hall for my client because they work 9 to 5, pay the $40 for the temporary CFO, right? To get the application for it.
And buyers knew what they were inheriting
Yep.
and the time frame that they had to complete it and
And so
understood it was their
went ahead and did it.
responsibility.
Right.
Yeah, for me, a house I sold, there was an issue that the city flagged with the basement bathroom plumbing. And the buyers were like, well, I don't want you to do anything with the basement because we're going to gut that. We're going to remodel it. So there's no point in you spending money to fix something only for us to come in and gut it. So we agreed, we negotiated and we agreed upon something. So the buyer, everything else was completed for the city requirements except that. And the buyer knew it. So they moved forward because they were going to gut that bathroom anyway.
Before living there.
Before living there, after closing, before living there.
So it is really all about communication and negotiation to make sure everybody's on
Oh,
board.
everything
Absolutely.
is.
Yep.
Always, right?
But also always verify that no matter what you agree upon, that the city will allow you to still do that.
One other thing, at least for Westland, and I think for most of them, that is required to issue the certificate of occupancy, even if everything else passes, is the buyer has to sign what's called a roof affidavit or a roof letter, which basically just says that the buyer accepts the house with the roof in the condition that it's in. It's a 3-sentence piece of paper. You can
And Garden City.
Yep, you can
Taylor.
download it off their thing, Taylor too. So obviously somebody sued somebody once somewhere about a roof,
yeah.
right? And so now you have to just accept the roof for what it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those documents can be found online for each of the city's websites.
So, if you,
Get it to the title company.
yeah, again, if you ever have a listing opportunity, not opportunity, but if you're getting a listing signed or you're representing a buyer, call ahead of time. And if you have a buyer, you're looking right now, preemptive, and they're looking in Garden City is one of the cities they're looking in, call right now, educate yourself, go on their website, see what's required. Again, you will be avoiding potential pitfalls, but just by knowing ahead.
Especially right now that things are moving so fast.
Yeah.
You want to know.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. Cause think about this, guys. You represent a buyer, you go look at a property, they haven't had the city inspection done, but you say, okay, even if you write it in your stuff, contingent upon, and then your buyer comes in, they do their private home inspection, you negotiate that stuff, they have the appraisal done, and then the city comes in 3 weeks later to do their inspection, and they've got $20,000 worth of stuff, and your seller says, no, I don't want to do it. Do they have to? No, they don't have to. And your buyer's out all of that money that they fronted.
Well, what's on the PA? Does the PA say that the seller is going to pay for all
That's
that?
true. Yeah. Well, and if I'm representing a seller and I haven't had it done, I might put on in the purchase agreement that there's a cap, right? I'm going to not obligate my sellers to have to spend 20 grand if they don't, you know what I mean?
Good point.
Ask if only requires one, right?
No, only for vacant.
Oh, only for vacant? Oh, okay, then I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, because I did mark seller is responsible.
Yeah.
And they accepted.
I always do it by default, even if I know that the area doesn't require it.
Right. So do
Seller,
I.
seller.
I don't like blank spaces.
Yeah.
I did have one person cross that out though.
Some do.
I have.
Some do, or NA, they put,
Which is good, because they read it.
Yes. Chris?
What is the average price range for the
I think like 150, something like that.
Yeah, it's He asked what was the average cost. I'm not in the $100, $100 to $200 range. It's a bit of a money grab, and there's usually a fee to come back for a reinspection, but it is what it is.
One last quick question for me. Oh, go
Hold
ahead,
on.
Angela.
Hope, go ahead, and then Angela.
Okay, so I'm thinking of renegotiations. So if, in the event that you had a seller that did a city inspection, okay, and you put a cap on it, and they were only willing to, I think Sharon kind of addressed this, so I'm thinking out loud and maybe regurgitating what she said. So and they weren't willing to fix everything. Can you still market that? I think I heard Sharon say that's what she did, right? You can still market that property to people, even though those items are not fixed. They just have time frames. Do you have a specific amount of time that you can market?
No. So in other words, if you were representing a seller and you do have a city inspection done, you should disclose that, whether or not the sellers are game to address those issues or not. You know, you should drive, or you should disclose. The buyer's
Okay.
going to find out anyway. So I mean,
So for instance, if you know that there's a list of things that need to be fixed.
Right.
and you know that your seller does not want to address it, I would upload it into the document section of the MLS. You'll have your seller's disclosures, your lead-based paint, and here's a copy of the city inspection. Let the other agents know what they're dealing with before they write you an offer.
yeah, exactly.
Thank you. I think what I'm also asking is at that point that they receive that report back from the city, is there a timeline or time frame given, a deadline that they have to get things fixed, or no?
I'm probably, yeah. Like, could they, in other words, could they say no? And it's too long of a list. I'm not going to sell. I'm going to stay in the home. Is there a penalty for that? I don't know. I don't think so.
Is that what you're asking? Or are you saying, well, they have to fix it before close or you can't close?
Yeah.
Okay,
You want a temporary.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Temporary means the buyer takes care of it.
there you go. That's what I'm looking for.
Okay, not the expiration of the lease.
Okay. Angela?
Okay, so the C of O inspection.
Yep.
That's the city inspection, and that's separate from the private home inspection, right? So there are
Correct.
two separate inspections.
Yep. Which
So-
is also separate from the FHA or VA appraisal / inspection.
Use things.
Okay, so would the seller pay for the C of O inspection and the buyer pays for the private inspection?
Correct.
Okay.
Majority of the time.
Again, depends on what's on your PA.
Yeah. Maybe I'm listing.
You wanna open
Oh, yeah.
PA just to remind everybody what you're talking about. Sorry, maybe if you guys see it in writing, we keep saying the PA, but
So again, everything is negotiable. It's not always the seller who pays for it. The buyer can offer to pay for it.
Well, I mean, sure.
everything is always negotiable, but,
So this is a PA. You guys see this pulled up?
Yeah.
Number 16, government certification. When I think government, I think like the federal government, but be careful, be aware that this is municipality, any city governing body. If the property is located in a jurisdiction that requires an inspection prior to sale, including well and septic, that's a different topic, because even though it's included in the same thing, because Macomb and Wayne require
It's a
this.
separate
and
inspection,
Washington.
right?
Yep. Seller will order necessary inspections, and we always get to choose these box, which ones check. Seller will pay for necessary inspections. If any repairs are necessary in order to obtain written approval, seller will make all necessary repairs.
which is what's marked, right?
That's because that's what's marked. Yeah. If
Okay.
I was submitting an offer and you check buyer would be responsible for it. You're putting yourself at lots of risk. But yeah. So
Okay. Thank you.
I think we've talked about this before, the well and septic. That's something separate. Wayne, Macomb, and Washtenaw counties require the county to do an inspection on the septic prior to a sale. And that's outside of what we're talking about. You could not need a C of O, but you have to have the septic inspection, or you could have a C of O necessary, but no septic inspection, let's say somewhere in Oakland County, Southfield. So
that's why, if you look at, if you know that a house has well and septic, you should be including the well and septic addendum in your purchase agreement. And the well and septic addendum that we have now, if you look at it, has two sections, an A and a B. And that A section very specifically asks you what county you're in. and it tells you if you need it or not. So make sure you use that.
When in doubt, what, guys?
Call.
When in doubt, do your research. You guys know the little, you ever seen the little thing, BATVAI? You know, don't know what that stands for?
Yes.
Buyer's agent to verify all of the information. You don't actually have to have it listed. But it is default, like you should. And if a buyer, if you go down a path and this comes up at the 11th hour, the buyer is going to say, why didn't you tell me? So when in doubt, ask, right? And how can you ask? Call the city or township that the property is located in, right? And don't ever take the listing agent or the other agent's word for it.
That happened to me once and it burned me.
Oof.
Because, and even like, I'm talking 3 days before closing.
Yeah.
And they said, well, it's in this Huron Township doesn't require one. Well, guess what? New Boston does. It's like, well, but New Boston's in Huron Township. Fine, great. I'm glad you just told me that, but now we're screwed.
Yeah.
You got to go put a check in that mailbox at the city. This was during COVID.
Yeah.
Because nobody's there. And they let us close. No, because they couldn't even get in. The county or the city couldn't get in.
Got it.
Or whatever.
Got it.
New Boston.
Yeah.
That sucked.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay.
Bad.
All right. So,
Different number, but it's the same.
all right. So we're gonna pivot a little bit, and we're gonna talk about the transition. There's been some questions about Sharon. You want to define this?
Yeah, like it's kind of a gray area. You know, there's a lot of activity when you're writing the offer, you get it accepted, and then you schedule your inspection and you know what you're doing. Like you've got your marching orders. Now all of a sudden the inspection comes back, you've negotiated or not, whatever, everything's good. And then everybody sits back, not everybody, but agents have a question of saying, now what? What do I do until closing? What's my responsibility? What's not? And we've been getting those questions lately. And it's one of those things where we're always talking about different topics. And I think it's been a while since we've talked about that specific month of time between inspection and closing. So we just want to quickly hit some of those things.
Cool. I'm actually accessing the coaching drive. You guys, I am a big fan of, even if buyers are taking the property as is after their private home inspection, I'm a big fan of putting that in writing. Some agents say, well, if the days have passed, you don't need to. And I guess that's technically true based on our agreement, right? How it's written is that okay, so be aware that ours says, you know, something different than someone else's might say. And this isn't a Pete's Forms class, but I just want you to be aware of what these days mean, because if regardless of what side you're on, you have to understand what the contract means and the date. So ours says, you know, that we're going to inspect the home within X amount of days. Unless buyer notifies seller in writing within X amount of days after obtaining results of said inspection that they are dissatisfied or buyer elects to blah, 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 the sale shall be consummated. So in other words, basically what it says is after the inspection, if you don't put in writing that you're dissatisfied with it, it'll be assumed that you're moving forward. I am a big fan of putting things in writing. I just like one little addendum. It just says buyer's inspection contingencies hereby satisfied. All other terms and conditions remain the same. There is a technical form that says after inspection or whatever, but as long as it's in writing, I just feel better about at night.
Did you say you do it as just a memo or as an addendum?
As an addendum. I always just do it as an addendum. Now on the flip side too, if I'm representing the seller and the buyer's agent's like, hey, we're all good, great, send me a satisfaction, because I want to make sure it's documented. And the reason I say that is because as an agent, I have communication with the other agent, right? But I don't have communication with the buyer, right? If I'm representing the seller. So I want something signed with the buyer's signature on it that says they were satisfied, right? So there's no opportunity for anything lost. Because the buyer could say, no, I told my agent I wanted this, and he said you were going to do that, or whatever the case may be. Does that make sense? So again, everything in writing, agreement signed. So after you've had those negotiations, like Sharon said, you're going to consummate it with something, right? This isn't a class on articulating an inspection addendum, but you are going to agree everything in writing, right? And then you're going to be satisfied. And then what? Well, some lenders haven't been ordering the appraisal until the inspection's done.
Yeah, most of the time.
Yeah.
So now you need to then get a hold of your client's lender and tell them, we're good to go. We've passed the inspection contingency phase. Please order the appraisal. ASAP, right? You gotta get all over them.
Yep. And if it's and if your agreement based on your private home inspection includes a price reduction, a concession, or something else, make sure that the title companies and the lender have a copy of that.
Yeah. So right there, number 5, right? Send a copy of the PA disclosures to just I do this before the inspection personally. Some people wait until after the inspection because they don't want the title company starting a file and starting to work.
Yeah.
The whole deal's gonna fall apart.
Yeah.
My process is as soon as I have a bottom line, that's what I do. Put together an email that introduces everybody. Listing agent, buyer's agent, your title company, their title company, and the lender, everybody on the same email with copies of every fully executed piece of paper that you have that just says, hey, this is me. Get a hold of me if you need to. You just want everybody to be able to communicate with each other because that's where most problems happen.
Yeah,
You agree?
exactly. There's these days we're typically doing split titles. So there's 2 title companies involved, a lender, 2 agents. I mean, there's some of these agents, well, it's the lead agent, but the buyer's
This is my
agent's on it.
assistant,
This is my
copies on
assistant.
the
Yeah.
stuff.
So I err on the side of I'm going to over communicate until someone tells me they're good,
Yep.
right? Especially to get the ball rolling. I've been in situations where it's like 2 weeks before closing, and it's like, oh no, buy side or list side never ordered title because they never got a copy of something. It's like, what? So yeah, making sure that I have all accurate emails and stuff. That's why typically after you guys consummate a deal, the other agent may reach out and be like, hey, what's your contact for your title company?
Right.
Right. So
yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, no, that's what I was gonna bring up. I was gonna say the same thing you did, because I usually use Legacy, and Legacy tells me they want, the second we have a bottom line, they want to know about it and get it started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They would prefer to do the work and have it go
Yep.
Yeah.
south than wait a week.
and keep in mind, if you order title, whether it's on the list side or the buy side, and the deal falls apart, the buyer or the seller is not going to be charged anything.
Right.
The title company makes their money with the closing fee and title insurance that they sell when they close, right? So if you order title to get the ball rolling and then the deal falls apart, that's not going to be a fee to them. Now, if the deal falls apart after appraisal, the buyer's already paid for that. They're going to be out that money and inspection money, but not title work. So there's no reason to hold off on title, especially I would say we're in a busy season right now. It's kind of a crazy market. You want to be able to adhere to on time. The last thing that you want is a delay in closing because you waited too long. So
Question.
Yeah.
So let's say you're on the buy side and you send your PA into the seller, they sign it and send it back, and you notice that there's some initials missing. How big a deal is that?
They're gonna make you come back and do it, so you might as well just take care of it.
Yep. Yeah. I'd fire it right back. I would still, I consider it a done deal, not a done deal, but
Security.
our PA has a few spots on it that some people might not typically have their client sign because they're not akin to reading it very often. Right. Yeah. Especially the homestead section. So yeah, if you notice that there's missing signatures, title company is going to find it and they're going to
Underwriters. gonna-
just, hey, kindly, I'm getting the ball rolling. We ordered inspection, but I noticed there's a couple spots if you could have your seller sign, politely. But yeah, make sure your paperwork's together
'Cause they're gonna come
and
back to you anyway.
exactly. Yep.
All right, so you ordered the appraisal?
So you've ordered the inspections behind you, you've ordered the appraisal, you're kind of waiting. This is where the biggest opportunity to communicate with your clients, because there's a lot of spots in the transaction where it's like, hurry up and wait. You're like, what's happening right now? Like not a lot's happening, right?
Mhm.
You're going to get you're going to get an email from the title company, right? With the title work. And people always say, what do I do with this? Do I forward it to my buyer, my client? Like, what do I do with this? Because does everyone know what I'm talking about? Right?
Mhm.
You've ordered
Outline
title and you get this email and
fees.
you don't even know what it looks like, right?
But you
So
should read it.
you should read it. Absolutely. And all title work is going to be subject to satisfaction of things. If you're on the buy side, it's like satisfaction of, you know, paying off the loans and doing this. And, you know, they'll let you know if there's any real red flags on it. Sometimes we need documentation of the divorce decree or the death certificate. That's always a big
Or
one.
Trust certificate.
Or
You
marriage
find out that
certificate.
You forgot to send an addendum.
Yes. So you will, when you get that, you know, don't just fire it over to your client because they don't know what they're looking at, but have it as an opportunity to review. If you have questions, if you're looking through and you couldn't explain something, pick up the phone and call the title company. They'll explain it to you. Because again, if you forward it to your client and they ask you questions, you're going to look like a doof if you don't know the answers.
Do you forward the title commitments to your client?
I do. Yeah.
I don't.
I don't know. I've
I've
never,
even thought about it.
yeah. I mean, I would say most of the time the buyers are like, is there any concerns? No, there's no concerns. Okay.
So the title commitments is just what the title company has found out about the property?
Yeah.
It's
just
all
an
the
initial-
conditions that, all the conditions that they need fulfilled in order to provide equitable title to the next party, right?
Hey, Matt.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you said this, and if you did, I'm sorry. So do you notify the title company after the PA is signed or after the inspection is done, appraisal?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, after the purchase agreement is fully executed, I order title. I send it over to order title. Again, you know, it could fall apart because of a buyer's inspection or this and that, but after it's fully executed, I do order title.
Okay.
And then if the deal does fall apart, make sure you notify them as soon as possible, because because there's people working behind the scenes, and if they would love to kill the file
Yep.
and not work on it.
All right, so you're gonna order the appraisal. It takes, hopefully they order it right away. It'll probably take 3 or 4 days to actually get scheduled, right? Because it goes to a dispatch company and someone's randomly chosen as the appraiser. And then they'll call the listing agent and they will schedule it. When all is said and done, you're probably looking at like 10 days before you get it back, maybe 7 to 10 days.
Yeah, and
7 if you're lucky.
it's important to communicate this to your clients, to set proper expectations, because, you know, if you're a seller, you're typically anxious because you want to know. If you're a buyer, especially if you've done an appraisal guarantee, you're anxious to want to know.
For sure.
So I always set the expectations. Let me ask you this, guys. As a buyer's agent, how do you know when an appraisal has been ordered or scheduled?
Talk to the mortgage inspector.
If the lender communicates to you, yeah.
Oh, no, I
Yeah.
call them and ask them.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Are you supposed to be there?
Not as a buyer's agent.
Not as a buyer's agent. So most appraisers rather are going to reach out directly to the listing agent or schedule it via showing time. That's what I see most of them doing these days, right?
Yeah.
So as a buyer's agent and a buyer, I'm over here kind of in limbo. I don't necessarily know. So as a best practice for me as a listing agent, I always let the buyers know, hey, FYI, appraisal was just scheduled for Tuesday at 10. Awesome. They always appreciate you letting them know.
I
Okay.
asked them to let me know.
Yeah, exactly. Appraiser is going to come. Sellers always freak out. Oh, I got to get my house ready. Yes, you want your house to be presentable, but they're not appraising it based on the cleanliness of the countertops or anything like that. In fact, most of the time, the sellers don't even have to be gone, you know, especially if they're working from home or whatever. Appraisers have access to lockbox. I, as a listing agent, try to be there for all of my appraisals, but if you're not there, it's okay typically. Yeah, Hope.
All right, so I had a situation with my client where he didn't want the appraiser in there by himself, only because he has kids in and out and stuff going on.
Sure.
And I guess it's just kind of like a public service announcement. Don't tick off your appraiser.
No.
What happened?
I was on the verge of doing that because I didn't know that they were considered like salespeople, sales licenses, and were held to the same, moral ethical code. And he asked me, he's like, wait a minute, he doesn't want the appraiser in the house by himself. And I had to really think how to tiptoe around that. We worked it out, and I told him, he has kids and he just wants someone there. And he was okay with it, but it was tense for a minute. And I really realized, I just stepped into something, because my client really didn't want anyone in his house outside of an agent and a showing. But
Sure.
that was because I didn't know. So I'm just sharing that.
Yeah. So again, that's why we're talking about this. Hey, Mr. Seller, the appraiser is going to call. They're going to be in and out very quickly. Honestly, I know you think that they're going to be looking at everything just like the inspector. They're not. They're going to be running around. They may take a few measurements. They may snap some photos. They're doing a majority of their report and their work outside of your home. They're just coming to your home to validate that it's there and everything is good. So you may be actually quite surprised how quickly they're in and out. They can let themselves in. Typically, the listing agent does make themselves there, especially if they're presenting some comparables to them, or as hey, I'll answer any questions if you have them. Not all listing agents do that. So if you're on the buy side well, I guess it wouldn't make sense there. If you're on the list side and the appraiser calls you and your seller doesn't want them there, you better make plans to be there, right? Because no one wants to piss off the appraiser. They hold the keys a little bit. But again, it's very quick. And then like Sharon said, they're going to go back and then people expect, what are the results? What are the results? No, it doesn't work like that. They go and they finish the report. They typically could take a couple days. Then they submit it. The underwriters, before they even release the results, look it over. So you might not know from the time the appraiser actually is out at the property to when you get the report back, or not even the report, but the green light or red light. It could be a week. You just have to set those proper expectations, because everyone's on pins and needles. And again, nothing else is happening really besides the buyer giving documents to the lender and getting different things cleared up. Nothing else is happening. So everyone's on pins and needles. So, I always try to get an understanding of how long they expect without being disrespectful. But at the same time, communicating to my client, even when I don't have news, right? There's that old adage, no news is good news. No. In this regard, I always find that if I communicate with my client, even if I don't have an update, that they appreciate it, because they know that I'm not just like out there forgetting about them.
And one last thing, I noticed that the appraiser really didn't want me there. Okay. He was old school. He's been doing this 50 years. When I met him, I realized what, the situation was. He's been doing it a very long time, and he didn't want the listing agent nosing around and getting in his way. So you have to really be aware of the circumstances when you're dealing with people. And be sure to, be courteous as much as you possibly can. It worked out, but just was a really big lesson learned.
Yeah. Is it in the seller's best interest that the house appraises for as high as possible? Absolutely. Absolutely is. So therefore, is it in the listing agent's best interest to make sure that the appraiser is using comps that support the value? Yes.
Right.
Therefore, does it make sense that the listing agent maybe provides some comps to the appraiser? That's where the gray area, that's where the level of, hey, this guy doesn't think I know what I'm doing. He's got to do my job for me. So it's something like this. Hey, Mr. Appraiser, my name is Matt. I'm the listing agent. I'm just here as a courtesy to my sellers. I want to let you know that I'm here to answer any questions if you have. I know that you've probably already looked at comparables, but I just have a select few that I took out that helped us basis this listing price around, and I'd be happy to share those with you. Use them or not. I know that you know what you're doing. You're stroking the ego a little bit. You're not telling them that you know what to do with their job. You're just kind of there to politely help them.
I think as new people, we have such an edge with that. Like, oh my God, you've been doing it for 15 years. Like, I want to learn more. I found these comps. Do these look like something that you think?
I wouldn't even have that much of a conversation.
Yeah, no, so you have to feel it out. Some are going to be there and they're like, oh yeah, like Shaddy, Kathy. And those are the ones that I'm like, hey, let me ask you this. Does a fourth bedroom add as much blah, blah, blah? And if these guys are talkative, you just eat it up, even if you don't care. It's an opportunity to learn. If it's the guy that's there and he doesn't want you in his way, stay back. Don't say anything. Just say, hey, I'm here if you need me.
So another thing, there's actually, I don't know if I want to use the word crisis, but it's an issue that there are a shortage, so to speak, of appraisers. The median, like the average age of an appraiser right now is, I think, in their 60s. No, I'm serious.
It takes a lot more to get your license as an appraiser than
Yeah,
it does a real
it's
estate
like
agent.
So when I first got divorced, I actually looked into it. 2,000 hours of apprenticeship to be an appraiser. And the problem, and this was 15 years ago, was finding an appraiser who wants to have an apprentice. Because a lot of them like just doing their thing and they don't want to deal with it. So they're actually changing some of the rules to get certified right now because it's a problem. So you're more than likely going to get an older guy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you got to be careful. Just read the room type of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a big practice in reading the room.
Yeah. No, it is. It really is.
So we don't need to get into, the next step is what happens when the appraisal value comes in, right? Is it right on? Is it high? Is it low? I would say we can spend a whole hour just talking about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially adding the extra layer of what if it has an appraisal guarantee in there?
Yeah.
Well, does it have a floor? Because Leisha just ran into a situation where there was an appraisal guarantee, but there wasn't a floor, and appraised for lower than the list price, and the seller says, I don't have to sell it.
Yep.
And I am of the notion that, well, legally they don't have a choice because they've agreed to sell it for X amount above the appraisal amount. Pete talked to the lawyer, and it's a gray area that the buyer might not win. So it wasn't necessarily worth pursuing. So another reason why there might be in your best interest to have a floor in your offer or in the addendum. But anyways, based on the appraisal results coming back, you figure those out, you sort those out. Let's pretend you work it through.
Yep.
You're gonna go towards the last step, which is waiting on what? Clear to close. Okay. At this point, most title companies will not actually set a day and time for closing it until that clear to close is issued.
So nerve-wracking.
It's nerve-wracking. Now, can you tentatively speak within the parties to figure out days and times? Sure, absolutely. I always like finding out, where are your thoughts at? Do you want to close at the same location? Is it truly a split title? Right? I've got a couple of closings coming up. We realized one of them, the buyer's in Virginia, so it didn't matter where my seller signs, right? Because they're doing that. However, the seller needs to sign first before the documents can be sent to the buyers to sign. So we're coordinating that.
I did a closing on Monday, the Thursday or Friday before, without even asking what time works for you. Nothing. The seller's title just sent an email out to everybody and said, closing at this time in this location. I was like, hold on. First of all, that's out in Trenton and the house is here.
Yeah.
That time doesn't work for us.
Yeah.
We made it split, but so you need to be on the ball.
Yeah.
And make sure you know what's going on.
Yeah. Typically in the past, the sellers kind of dictated the when and the where. But again, like I said, most closings these days or most transactions are split title. So, if your sellers if the property's in Novi, it makes sense for your sellers to close in Novi. If the buyer's, title company is in Livonia, they don't have to come to Novi to close unless they want to be there. Sometimes people enjoy meeting each other. It's kind of weird, but
Well, I had one a couple weeks ago where the house is in Novi, the buyer's in Novi, the seller's in Novi, the buyer's agent is in Novi, but the seller's title company is out in Sterling Heights. It's like,
They
I
should
am
come out
not
here.
going out
Yeah.
there. They did. They ended
Yeah.
up coming here, but it was a mess.
Yeah. I had one where just last week, properties in Highland, listing agents in Milford. My title company is like, I can close anywhere. But for my buyer, Milford wasn't the most convenient, but we did closing there right after our final walkthrough. So it made sense. So again, there's no rule of thumb. You just have to logically make through it. Now, even if you're closing at the same location, you're going to be closing in separate rooms anyway. So, it all depends too.
But it's one of those things that as soon as, the appraisal, everybody's fine, and now you're waiting for the clear to close, and you have this 10 days where it's crickets.
Yeah.
Nobody's talking about anything. And you're like shooting messages to the lender.
You're like,
you know,
what is
"Hey,
going
how are
on?"
we doing? How are we doing?
One
You know,
title
it's-
company doesn't have the
Right.
documents from the other one, or the
Right.
lender's waiting on the.
And then all of a sudden, hey, congratulations, we have it clear to close. And now you've got like, I gotta email this person, I gotta make sure the times work with everybody, where are we gonna do it? I gotta see if there's a conference room, I need my Alta statement, I need, you know, and you get like super stressed out for like 2 days.
Yeah, and what I can say to that is, it never gets easier.
Nope.
Unless you have a transaction coordinator or someone who's kind of
Or
helping.
You have reasonable, logical
Yes,
parties that
yes.
you're working with.
But-
Sometimes you don't.
The one thing that will save you is over communicating. If you feel like you're not hearing anything, you're like, yeah, I'm just waiting on it. Reach out. Don't wait. If you get an email from someone and you like forward it to the other, like keep everyone to your best ability in the loop, right? And if someone's not, if there's the person that's in the group project who's not pulling their weight, call them out on it, or like pick up the phone and say, hey, like it seems like the one thing that we're waiting on is this. Like you as a listing agent or buyer's agent, it doesn't matter. No one's going to do it for you. So just be that person that tries to move it forward.
So I have an example of this Sterling Heights one I was just talking about. It kind of blew up and I was pissed. I'll tell you why. Okay, the lesson in this is pay attention to who's being copied
Oh,
on
that's
the
a good
emails
one.
that you're getting. Because you may get an email that says, okay, closing confirmed, this time, this place. And if you're the only one that's copied on it, nobody else knows about it. So I got an
Or don't
email-
assume that they sent other emails that
I got an email forwarded to me from the listing agent that came from her title company that confirmed a day and time for closing. I was like, cool. I put it on my calendar. Well, it turns out that I was the only one that the listing agent sent that email to. Everybody else was still operating on the time and date from the email prior to that, which
Yeah.
was 2 hours later. So I went and did my walkthrough. The seller's there. He's like, what do you mean closing's at 1 o'clock? I'm like, yeah, closing's at 1. He goes, no, I think it's at 3. And I'm like, nope, it's at 1. And I start calling people. And now everybody in the world, except for me and my clients, think it's at 3.
And that was just 2 hours. Imagine if it was 2 days or a different location.
So I
Or-
went back and looked at the emails and it was because I was the only one that listing agent sent the message to.
Yeah.
So
Not
if
even our own
if that
client.
happens, it's okay for us to forward that information to everybody?
Not only forward it, like scream it from the rooftops.
I did. I'm
New
serious.
email, include everyone. Hey, just want to confirm we're all on the same
I
page.
was
Like
how
you
did
can,
this happen?
you cannot over communicate. And don't assume. That's all I would say.
What point do we need to maybe reschedule the closing date per the PA? So like, for instance, like mine, I'm supposed to close next week and I still don't have anything yet.
When you say you don't have anything, what do you mean?
Well, they haven't told me that we're clear to close yet. I've
Okay.
asked a couple times.
So next week, when? Is your
Well,
range the whole week?
Yeah, the range is the whole
All right,
week.
so today's Thursday. If you get a clear to close tomorrow,
Yeah, that'd be good, but that's what I'm saying is there any time, like, I mean, is it like, if you only got 2 more days left? of your-
I mean, there's nothing wrong with reaching out to lenders saying, hey, I'm concerned that we're not going to be able to close per the contract. Should I be worried? No, we're fine. Okay, great. And then you look and say, well, we got to close by Friday. In other words, if we don't have clear to close by Tuesday, we're going to have to
right?
be like, we're going to have to execute an addendum. You know, sometimes I haven't done it proactively and they want to execute an extension at closing. So, you know,
3 days is safe, right?
Yeah.
Because you have the
Yep.
truth thing. So
Yep.
Okay.
if it's 3 days before your last closing date and you still don't have a clear to close, I would get
That's-
another week. I
yeah,
would just
makes
say,
sense.
okay.
All right, thank you.
Oh, so you're saying 3 days before the proposed closing date, if you don't hear anything? be
Well, when
like,
you have-
"Hey, can we get an extension?"
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, preemptively being ahead of the curve and saying, hey, we're gonna probably need to extend this so everyone's on the same page.
So that's more documentation addendum or something?
Yep, it's simple
Super
as,
easy.
hey, buyer and seller agree to extend the closing date to be, you know, within this day to this day.
All other terms and conditions remain unchanged.
Exactly. I like that
Always
line.
end everything with that.
I like that line. So, I know that was a whirlwind, but there's a couple of things that were on the board that people want to talk about, and we're going to continue doing that. Next week, Monday, we have our accountability. On Thursday, we have Red Day. so we will not be having our skills. The office is closed. All Keller Williams offices are closed throughout the country or throughout the world, I guess, right? It's gonna be a cool event. Hopefully weather's good. Yeah. Low 60s, I think. And yeah, it'll be outside, so it's safe. Everyone has some work to do. And yeah.
And then maybe the following Thursday, we can talk about appraisal. There's so many appraisal guarantees.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
That we
We'll actually
can-
go through an appraisal report.
Yep.
That'd probably be a
And
good
what
idea.
to do,
Yeah.
how it goes.
Hey, Matt,
Yeah.
Tomorrow.
do you know if the shirts
Hold
are
on,
in
guys.
yet? Have you seen anything? Because I ordered
I
my
had mine
shirt, but
shipped. I had mine shipped to my house, so I got mine yesterday. But I know if you didn't click for shipping, that it's going to be available here in the office
Day of,
the day of.
I think.
If they come early, they'll announce it. But
Tammy, is Tammy on there still?
Tammy's probably in the other meeting for Monday.
oh, okay.
Oh, probably.
Yeah, Doug was gonna mention that Brent's hosting a thing tomorrow at 12 about the appraisal.
Okay, so after Pete's forums, tomorrow is Brett Wilson's having a little class on appraisals.
So absolutely go listen to that.
Yeah.
okay, that'll be on Zoom as well.
Oh,
Yeah, yep.
It's a
Okay.
Oh, and it's a lunch and learn. So if you're in here,
Oh.
apparently you get lunch.
Pretty cool.
All right, guys.
Yeah.
Appreciate you guys.
Matt, can I borrow you for 2
Have a
minutes?
good weekend, everyone. Thanks, guys.
See ya.
Have a good weekend.
Matt,
Yes.
may I borrow you 2 minutes?
Sure.
I'm gonna-
On Zoom, or you want to call me?
I'm taking that one.
We can do it here.
Okay.
I'm leaving you though.
Okay, because it's really about what we were just talking about.
Okay.
I spoke to Sharon briefly yesterday regarding a true split. I have a couple that they're gonna do their closing in one location. Does it matter what time it is if it's a split location? If it's a split title?
So the sellers have to sign before the buyers.
Okay.
Just FYI. And keep in mind, no one gets their money. The sell side, they don't get their money until the buyers sign and the loan is funded. So sometimes, why I say that is let's say my sellers are closing at noon,
Mhm.
and the buyers aren't closing until 2:00. The sellers might be like, well, I want my money. Well, you're not getting your money until the buyers have signed everything, and those documents have been sent to their lender, and their lender has funded the loan, and the title company has received the funds. Right?
I would throw that past.
So,
just telling-
yes, they can be separate times. I like doing it at the same time, but just be aware that the loan's not going to get funded. Now, this is especially concerning if there's no occupancy.
Okay.
In other words, if I'm a seller and I am giving over keys at closing, I've got a bag of keys and garage door openers, right? And I don't have anybody to give that to. So if you're closing at 2 different locations, you're going to have to figure out how you're going to get that to the buyer's agent.
Mhm.
Also, I'm not going to hand over those keys and those garage door openers as the seller or the listing agent, even after my buyers, even after they haven't signed, until the funds are there. So there's a term called closing in escrow, which is basically everybody signs, but no monies have been exchanged yet because they're waiting on funding or this and that, or waiting on incoming wire. And if that's the case, I'm not going to hand over keys. I would never hand over keys unless the funds are in.
Okay, so listen to this. This is what she wrote me. She says, hey, Hope, because this is a true split, our side will probably need 2 days before your side closes due to mailing and processing time of seller's documents. So that's what her concern is then, it
Are
sounds
you
like.
representing the buyer or the seller?
I'm representing the buyer.
Okay, so yeah, the seller can sign first, especially if they're out of town. They don't necessarily need 2 days. Typically, those documents are scanned in or overnighted. But the buyer, the deal will be consummated once the buyer signs, after the seller has, right? And then those documents are sent to the lender to release the funds. And then once they have confirmation that we receive the funds, the deal is technically closed.
I'm just trying to figure, why does she need 2 days?
Well,
she
are the sellers out of town?
No, they're getting a divorce though.
Okay, well,
So maybe
mean-
they're different locations.
yeah, exactly. And really, it doesn't affect you, because the date of closing, the technical closing, is when the buyer signed everything. As long as all the documents are ready and everything like that, the sellers can pre-sign a day before or 2 days before. but the deal is not closed until the buyer signed all those documents and it's funded. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a little bit confusing because I'm going, okay, so we were actually supposed to close the 7th, and I'm getting feedback from Legacy that they can't get a split, information on the split from the other title company. And she keeps writing me saying, what can you find out? And all I'm finding out is that their side isn't ready.
This is the perfect example of you need to send an email by your listing agent, our title company, their title company, lender, all in the same email. Here's
Okay.
the situation. Seller needs to pre-sign, you know, whatever it is, you know, like
Okay.
I'm looping everyone in here, guys. We got to have a group meeting because this one-on-one is not accomplishing anything.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And then if someone replies to you, respond back and say, please reply to all.
Okay. Okay.
Sound good?
Yeah, this was perfect for me today.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you. Enjoy
All right.
your day.
Thanks, guys. See ya.